All right, strap yourselves in for this one, folks, because we're going deep on Željko Ražnatović.
Better known as Arkan.
Better known as Arkan, right?
Yeah.
This guy's story is like straight out of a movie.
Oh, yeah.
It's wild. It's got crime, it's got history, it's got it all.
Uh-huh.
We're talking petty thief turned Europe's most wanted. Then you've got paramilitary leader during the Yugoslav wars.
Wow.
And then, to top it all off, a controversial public figure until he gets assassinated in 2000.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It is. There's so much to unpack.
We've got a mountain of sources here.
Yeah. Historical accounts, biographies.
It's like we're piecing together a scrapbook of a life that's honestly wilder than fiction.
That's a great way to put it. It really is.
So where do we even begin with a guy like Arkan? What's the mission of this deep dive?
I think the big challenge with Arkan is that he's shrouded in myth and controversy.
Right.
Separating fact from fiction, that's key here,
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like, who was he really? A ruthless criminal, a product of his time, or maybe a bit of both.
It's a puzzle for sure.
Is it a real puzzle?
So let's start with his early life.
Okay, yeah.
What kind of childhood did this guy have?
Well, his father was a big deal, a high-ranking officer
Oh, wow.
in the Yugoslav Air Force.
The military family.
Yeah, strict disciplinarian by all accounts.
I see.
And some biographers think this upbringing, this really rigid environment, might have actually fueled Arkan's rebellious streak.
The classic rebellious son story, right?
Exactly, that dynamic.
Interesting.
Instead of following in Dad's footsteps, he goes the opposite way, ends up in the Belgrade underworld.
Yeah, but we're not talking like criminal mastermind right away, are we?
No, not at all.
You start small.
Exactly. As a teenager, petty thief,
Right.
Belgrade parks, lifting purses, wallets, anything he could get his hands on.
Opportunist.
Yeah, but he was ambitious,
Yeah.
He wasn't content with small-time stuff.
You wanted more?
He wanted more, quickly moved on to bigger things, robbing shops
No.
with a crew of, equally volatile young guys.
So like a gang.
Yeah, kind of. They had these nicknames.
Nicknames. Like what?
Candyman, Karate Bob, Zika the Nerve.
Zika the Nerve. That's pretty good.
Hey, it's like something out of a Guy Ritchie movie.
Yeah, it really is.
These larger-than-life characters.
And they were making a name for themselves.
Yeah, quickly.
But even early on, Arkan had this knack for getting away with it.
Right from the start.
Escaping the consequences.
This first prison break. As a teenager.
No way. Serious.
Seriously, imagine that. A kid scaling a wall just disappears.
Like poof.
Gone, yeah.
That takes some guts.
It does.
I guess you could say that foreshadowed all his future escapes.
Definitely.
And it wasn't long before, his ambitions outgrew Belgrade.
That's right.
In 1972, he leaves Yugoslavia,
He's on the run.
embarks on this, international crime spree.
It's incredible, isn't it?
It's crazy.
He hones his skills during this time, becomes this master bank robber.
Really? Like a professional?
Oh, yeah. Known across Europe, meticulous planning, audacity, that was his trademark.
Wow.
Elaborate disguises.
Like what?
Sometimes a businessman, sometimes blending into the crowd.
That's smart.
He even carried a notepad, jotting down details, potential targets, escape routes.
Wow. Dedicated.
Yeah, but there's this chilling aspect to it all, too.
Right. It wasn't just like skilled thief. There's a darker side.
Definitely, he earned a nickname, the Smiling Bank Robber.
The smiling bank robber. What?
Yeah, from a surveillance image, you see him exiting a bank, bag of cash in hand.
And he's smiling.
Grinning, yeah, it's chilling.
That's creepy.
And there are stories about him like training a woman with roses moments before robbing the bank.
Seriously.
At gunpoint, this mix of charm and ruthlessness, it's a theme throughout his life.
That's wild. It's like he was playing a part.
In a way, maybe?
And then, of course, there are the prison breaks.
Oh, yeah, those are legendary.
Not just once, multiple times across Europe.
He broke out of prisons all over.
Sometimes in crazy ways.
Like clinging to the undercarriage of a train.
No way. Is that even possible?
Supposedly, yeah. Hard to believe, but that was Arkan.
He was like a ghost.
He was always one step ahead.
These escapes cemented his reputation, right?
Absolutely. He became this almost mythical figure, the criminal mastermind nobody could catch.
And this notoriety, it attracted some unwanted attention.
Oh, yeah. From UDBA, Yugoslavia's secret police.
Wait, the secret police? What were they interested in a bank robber for?
Well, even a notorious one like Arkan, they saw potential.
Potential.
His skills, ruthlessness, his network.
He was an asset.
Yeah, in their eyes. And this is where things take a turn.
Okay.
We see the lines blurring, criminal underworld, state apparatus, it all gets mixed up.
So instead of just being a target, he's a tool.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, was he manipulating them? Or were they using him?
It's a good question.
It really makes you think about Yugoslavia at that time.
How much corruption, intrigue was already happening?
Exactly. And to understand Arkan's motives, we need to delve into that context.
Because this alliance with UDBA, it leads him back to Yugoslavia.
It does, but not as the runaway thief he once was.
Things are about to get interesting.
Oh, yeah, you could say that again. When Arkan came back to Yugoslavia in the late 80s, it was a completely different scene.
He wasn't on the run anymore.
Not even close.
He was living large.
Oh, yeah, a total transformation. He was this flamboyant mob boss.
It's crazy to think about.
Driving a pink Cadillac, surrounded by luxury.
A pink Cadillac, seriously.
Seriously, and he had this air of, like, untouchability.
Yeah, like he was invincible.
Exactly. And get this, he even had a pet tiger.
A pet tiger.
A tiger, it just adds to the whole over-the-top persona.
That's just too it's like something out of a movie.
It really is. But beneath all the glitz and glamour...
There's something darker going on.
Oh, yeah. Arkan was a smart guy.
He knew what was happening.
He saw the political landscape, the rising tensions, Yugoslavia on the brink.
It was all falling apart.
And he saw opportunity in that chaos.
So this wasn't just about him enjoying the spoils of his criminal past.
No, this was about power.
He was ambitious.
Incredibly ambitious. He saw a path to power in a society that was fracturing.
Along ethnic lines.
Exactly, and that's where Arkan's tigers come in.
It's hard to believe that this group, I mean, they started as this ragtag bunch of, like, gangsters and ex-cons.
Football hooligans, too.
Right, and they become this feared paramilitary unit.
One of the most feared in the Yugoslav wars.
It's a crazy transformation.
It really is, and it's a chilling sign of the times.
Yugoslavia was on the edge.
Remember, Tito's death had left a power vacuum.
And nationalist sentiments, well, they were being exploited left and right.
By anyone who could.
And Arkan, well, he was quick to tap into that.
Oh, yeah, he knew how to play the game.
So he wasn't just a thug with a private army.
No, he was tapping into something deeper. Playing on people's fears and prejudices.
It's a dangerous game.
It is, but it worked, at least for a while.
So on the surface, these tigers, they align themselves with Milosevic.
With his vision of a greater Serbia.
Right. They said they were there to protect Serbian communities.
In Croatia, Bosnia, as those republics were breaking away.
Declaring independence.
But their methods were brutal.
We're talking ethnic cleansing, massacres, widespread terror.
It was horrific.
How did Arkan manage to hold this group together?
And direct that violence. It's a combination of things.
Okay, like what?
First, Arkan, he had charisma, and he was ruthless.
Like a cult of personality?
Yeah, you could say that. Reward loyalty, punish dissent with brutality.
Effective but terrifying.
It was. And second, the Tigers had money.
Funding.
Not just from Belgrade, but from Arkan's own criminal enterprises.
Now, the conflict, it was an opportunity for him, too.
Oh, yeah. Smuggling, looting, racketeering.
He was making a fortune.
War profiteering.
It's sickening.
It is. And third, well, they benefited from the climate of fear and hatred.
It was already there.
Exactly. They exploited existing tensions.
Between different ethnic groups?
Propaganda, intimidation, it all played a part.
It's a recipe for disaster.
It was a disaster.
One of the sources mentions that the Tigers were actually trained by UDBA.
The secret police? The same ones that recruited Arkan years earlier?
It's like that connection came full circle.
In a terrifying way.
And that training, well, it made them effective.
They weren't just random thugs.
They had instruction, military tactics.
Weapons handling, psychological warfare. They had it all.
It gave them an edge.
A chilling edge.
And it makes you wonder, how much of Arkan's rise was his own doing?
Versus the support he got from powerful people.
Within the Serbian government.
Was he really in control? Or was he a pawn?
It's hard to say for sure.
It's a question historians are still debating.
Arkan was a master manipulator.
Oh, yeah.
But he also had powerful patrons.
His relationship with Milosevic, that's a whole other story.
It was complicated.
To say the least.
They both needed each other.
In a way,
Milosevic needed Arkan's ruthlessness.
could get what he wanted.
And Arkan needed Milosevic's protection.
To operate freely.
It was a dangerous partnership.
Fueled by ambition and a shared belief in Serbian nationalism.
But even as Arkan was carrying out Milosevic's dirty work,
He was building his own power base.
accumulating wealth, influence.
It extended beyond the battlefield.
It's a terrifying example of how ambition and ideology can be so destructive.
Absolutely.
And the human cost of this, well, it was staggering.
The Tigers' reign of terror left a trail of devastation.
Across Croatia and Bosnia.
Their tactics were systematic and brutal.
And they'd surround villages.
Go in, kill anyone who refused to surrender.
Mass executions, torture.
Forced expulsions of non-Serbian populations. It was ethnic cleansing.
Places like Bijeljina.
In Bosnia, they became synonymous with the Tigers' brutality.
It's hard to even imagine the suffering.
The accounts from survivors, they're heartbreaking.
It's important to remember that this wasn't random violence.
There was a strategy.
The Tigers were a tool in Milojevic's ethnic cleansing campaign,
Aiming to create a homogeneous Serbian state.
It's chilling.
It is.
Even in the 20th century, this kind of barbarity was happening.
And what's even more disturbing?
Arkan wasn't just giving orders from afar.
No, he was there.
He was present during these atrocities.
Leading his men from the front.
He had completely transformed.
From petty thief to warlord.
He had embraced the dark side.
Fully.
But even while he was committing these horrific acts,
He was crafting his image.
as a Serbian patriot,
Propaganda, carefully staged appearances.
he was manipulating public perception.
It's a classic tactic.
Charisma and violence can go hand in hand.
It's a dangerous combination.
Makes you wonder, did he believe his own propaganda?
Or was it all a performance?
A calculated act?
It's a question historians are still debating.
Was he a true believer in the Serbian cause?
Or just a ruthless opportunist.
Maybe it's somewhere in between.
That's the complexity of Arkan.
And that leads us to
The
Srebrenica,
Srebrenica massacre.
one of the darkest chapters of the Yugoslav wars.
Absolutely. The Srebrenica massacre, it's one of those events that it stays with you.
It's hard to even talk about.
Yeah, over 8,000 Bosnian Muslim men and boys
Systematically murdered.
by Bosnian Serb forces.
It's just
Yeah,
horrific.
there's no other word for it.
And Arkan's Tigers, they were there.
Sources confirm they were present in Srebrenica.
During that week in July 1995,
It was a planned operation.
the scale of it, it's hard to even comprehend.
And even as the world was trying to process what happened,
Arkan, he kept going.
he was still operating seemingly without consequence.
How did he get away with it for so long?
Well, his connections, they ran deep.
With the Serbian government,
He was protected, seen as a hero by many.
it made it difficult to touch him.
The international community, they had their hands tied.
Plus, he was cunning.
Always one step ahead. Always.
It wasn't until 1997
2 years after Srebrenica,
that the ICTY, the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia,
they finally issued an indictment against Arkan.
but even then, it was a secret indictment
He kept it quiet. They were worried.
about making it more dangerous,
He might have gone into hiding, or worse.
incited more violence.
It was a delicate situation, to say the least.
So here we have Arkan, an indicted war criminal.
Walking free.
As the war is winding down,
What does he do? Does he
Hey.
disappear?
lay low.
Not exactly.
What happens?
He tries to reinvent himself.
Reinvent himself? How?
It's almost bizarre. He ditches the military fatigues, starts wearing suits.
From battlefields to boardrooms.
Exactly. He tries to become a legitimate businessman.
A businessman, really?
Even dabbles in politics.
It's a drastic change.
It is. It really is.
Did he really think he could just erase his past?
Well, it seems like he believed that by gaining wealth and influence,
In legitimate circles?
that he could protect himself.
From prosecution?
He invests in businesses, buys a football club.
Football club.
Yeah, he even forms his own political party.
Wow, he was going all out.
He was, but the question is, did it work?
Did people buy it? Did he actually distance himself from his past?
It's hard to say. Some argue he wanted a peaceful life.
To leave the violence behind?
Others saw it as a way to hold on to power.
To protect himself?
It's hard to know his true intentions.
One thing's for sure, his past was always there.
Looming over him.
He was living under that indictment.
Surrounded by enemies.
From the underworld, from political circles,
It was only a matter of time.
before it caught up with him.
And it did on January 15th, 2000.
He's gunned down.
In the lobby of Belgrade's Intercontinental Hotel.
It was a dramatic end.
To a dramatic life.
Do we know who was behind it?
There are theories,
Revenge for his war crimes.
political motives, underworld rivalries.
It is a mystery.
We may never know for sure.
His funeral was huge,
Thousands of people attended.
including many of his tigers.
It shows how complex his legacy is.
Hero to some, brutal criminal to others.
It's contradiction.
How do we reconcile those two things?
How do we make sense of a man who committed horrific violence?
But was also seen as protector.
Even a folk hero.
It's a tough question.
It really is.
History isn't black and white.
Ugh, messy.
Arkan's story forces us to confront that messiness.
The blurred lines between good and evil.
The power of myth-making.
Especially in times of conflict.
It also shows the dangers of unchecked ambition.
The corrosive effects of war.
On individuals and societies.
Arkan's life, it's a cautionary tale.
About the dark potential that exists within us all.
When the rule of law breaks down.
And violence becomes the norm.
It's a lot to think about.
Arkan's story, it's a wild ride.
Through a tumultuous period of history.
Full of intrigue, violence, unanswered questions.
It gives us a glimpse into the forces that shaped the Yugoslav wars.
And their lasting legacy.
It's a story that stays with you.
Any final thoughts for our listeners as we wrap up this deep dive?
I think Arkan's story reminds us that even amidst chaos and violence,
The pursuit of justice is essential.
it might be difficult, but it's necessary.
In understanding these complex figures.
It helps us grapple with bigger questions.
Responsibility, accountability, reconciliation.
These are issues that still resonate today.
Well said. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into the life and times of Željko Ražnatović.
Arkan.
Arkan, it's been a journey.
It has.
And I hope it's left you all with something to think about.
Me too.
Until next time, keep those minds curious. And remember, history is full of surprises.
And sometimes the most fascinating stories are the most unsettling ones.
That's for sure.